My name's James Berry and you are listening to Raw.
Live from your student radio station,
this is Raw News Update.
A petition calling for a referendum on Warwick SU's membership of the NUS has gained the required number of signatures, 2% of the student population, for the matter to be debated.
The motion will be voted on by students at an all-student meeting on Monday, 16th of May. It has been confirmed by the student union.
The proposal had previously failed to gain the number of signatures required to be debated before the deadline of the 3rd of May, but has since gained the required number.
The proposal was sent to Ollie Rice, the Student Union's Democracy and Development Officer, and it was confirmed on Tuesday that the motion will be sent to the all-student meeting and it will be soon after sent to the student vote online.
For more as this develops, follow us on Twitter at Raw News Warwick, on facebook.com/Raw News Warwick, and tune in to the news shows Friday and Monday at 9 a.m.
My name is Sadiq Khan. I'm running to the Mayor of London, and you're listening to Raw.
You are indeed, and you are listening to Perspectives with the Warwick Brexit Society and a whole host of panellists today. Myself, Henry Riley, and Niall Johnson will be hosting the show today, and we are joined by four fantastic panellists and very good-looking panellists in front of me. Firstly, we are joined by Barnaby Merrill, the self-confessed Labour supporter. Boo, cue the boos. Alistair Goldspink, who is not a self-confessed Labour supporter, to put it mildly.
Good to be here.
Good to have you. And Mike Wrench, who was the former comment editor of The Boar. Good to have you here, Mike.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And Sam Berkson, the only socialist on the panel today. Nice to have you as well. Now, there's been loads in the news this week about politics, which obviously we love, and in particular Natalie Bennett, who is stepping down as leader of the Green Party. It has been announced, and I'll just play you a quick clip of when we interviewed her at the station. We are thrilled to be joined by Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party.
I'll be voting to remain in the EU, and indeed the whole Green Party will be campaigning for other people to vote like that.
This is on the subject of electoral reform.
Obviously, our current electoral system has totally, deeply failed. We've got a government that's doing all the kind of damage it's doing now, from the trade union bill to the housing bill to its approach to immigration, that only got the support of 24% of eligible voters. We're obviously heading into a period of great change in politics. If you think about what happened last year, the SNP took the whole of Scotland, including seats in Glasgow. You look at Jeremy Corbyn, started at 200-1 and ended up being leader of the Labour Party. Just because we've had a century in which Labour and Tory have dominated our politics, it doesn't mean that's what the future looks like. Politics really is changing. We want to bring the railways back into public hands. I sort of get that's a bit radical, isn't it? Whereas, in fact, it never was radical.
Disallow the Greens Party from having a political broadcast.
As you might expect, I'm not very happy about it.
England or Australia?
England.
Next Tory leader?
Say Theresa May.
Larry Sanders or Bernie Sanders?
Larry is his brother. He's a Green Party member.
Favourite sport?
I used to be a rugby player, a cricket player, and a football player. I think I'll say football.
My name is Jacob Rees-Mogg, and you are listening to Raw.
And coming up later, we will be playing Jacob Rees-Mogg, as me and Niall caught up with him at the Warwick Brexit campaign, which was very entertaining.
It was.
And just to let you know, finally, you can get involved in the conversation today by tweeting us at Perspectives Raw or at Warwick Polsock, or clicking the contact tab on the web player if you're listening online, which I expect most of you are, unless you're obsessed with your AM radio. So thank you very much for listening, and please do get in touch. But we'll move on now to Natalie Bennett. And after hearing that, Barnaby, firstly, there's a poll on the Warwick Politics Twitter that I'm not sure if you voted in. That's a hint for all of you out there, actually, to give it a vote. It's got about 2 hours left on whether her leadership was fantastic or a disaster, and which the Boar pointed out was quite polarised. But Barnaby, how would you rate Natalie Bennett's leadership?
I voted disappointing, though I would have liked a Met option, as Ben Newsham pointed out. She's obviously, in that interview, she's obviously a very engaging, very intelligent, very committed woman, but I just don't think she's the right person to lead a party that's trying to break through. I know this is a sort of very cliche thing to say, but she is from Australia, and a lot of people do just hear that and are like, what on earth are you doing?
It's quite odd, isn't it? It doesn't seem like something we've had here.
It's quite jarring.
It's quite jarring. Alistair, do you think it's a problem that Natalie Bennett is from Australia?
Not in and of itself. Linton Crosby is quite an important man in British politics who is also from Australia and arguably has a lot more power, so you can't really be upset about one without being upset about the other. No, honestly, I'm just surprised she's stepping down, really. Having achieved their best ever election result last year. I guess the local elections were a bit disappointing, but honestly, it's such an odd decision. I can't understand it.
She was in an interview saying that the main reason is that she's met her target. So one of her key targets was to increase the membership of the Green Party, which she did from 13,000 to 60,000, which is what it's roughly at now when she's stepped down. And obviously, she did get an elected MP. I appreciate it wasn't her, but under first past the post, so I'm sure you'll all agree that's quite a commendable achievement. Mike, how do you assess Natalie Bennett's performance?
I think that she has been good for the Green Party, but in a sense that the Green Party was a non-entity when she became leader, and now it's just a slightly louder non-entity in some senses. She's been good for PR and for public recognition and things like that, but I mean, it's probably time to move on, find another leader. She's gotten to the point where the Greens could break through, but...
So do you think it's a problem with the Green Party then, so not her? So do you think if Caroline Lucas was possibly the leader, or, I don't know, in another world, Jeremy Corbyn was the leader, they would have been more effective than her, or do you think it's just that the Green Party's just irrelevant?
I think that, I mean, I'm not going to say that they're irrelevant because, you know, this is a democracy and we're all allowed our own beliefs. But in many senses...
Sounded so sincere then, Mike.
I try. But in many senses, they just seem like a grassroots labour movement, and they're not really that popular at the moment, it seems. So...
Sam, is it an interesting time for Natalie Bennett to step down, especially considering there aren't any mainstream candidates who look to want to fill the role of Green Party leader?
Probably. I'm not sure. I haven't really followed this one closely, to be honest. I did vote on the poll though, and I was hoping for a middle ground option, but I voted disappointing on the basis.
You can't be on the fence, Sam, your whole life. Come on.
No, because I voted disappointing because I thought, well, if Leicester can win the Premier League, the Green Party can get a majority in the House of Commons.
Fair enough. Just to let you know the results of that poll as it stands, 65 votes have been counted so far, and 45% say fantastic and 55% say disappointing. So quite split there. What do you think about that, Niall?
That's interesting. I mean, it's very, very difficult. I suppose if you're not passionate about Natalie Bennett or the Green Party, you're going to be very unlikely to vote that she was fantastic. So the only moderate and rather British response would be to say, you know, a bit disappointing. Just touching on Natalie Bennett, I think she was quite an unconventional politician. Do you think that sort of unconventional technique, and as not being a natural public speaker but more of a journalist, helped give the Green Party, you know, a bit of a different footing, helped increase popularity? Mike, I'll go to you on that.
I think that more and so now it's becoming evident that not being the same type of politician is an advantage. So, you know, with the rise of people like Jeremy Corbyn, who is not your average politician, I do think that Natalie Bennett did well from that sort of unconventionalness. Yeah.
Do you think that she ever recovered from the brain fade incident, the famous moment where she forgot Green Party policies just before the 2015 general election? Alistair?
No, I think that was a pretty catastrophic error, and I think their performance was kind of, you know, in spite of how she performed in interviews, because there was more than one car crash. It wasn't pretty to watch, and to be fair, you have to commend their grassroots sort of organisers for actually getting enough votes out to achieve the performance they did, given that the media coverage had not been positive at all.
I mean, it was their best. She did achieve the best general election result in the Green Party's history, but then again, it's a real issue as to whether the Green Party are relevant. And on that, Barnaby, who can you see as the next leader, potentially, of the Green Party? There's been names floated around like Caroline Lucas, who obviously has been, I don't know if she's been leader, but they used to have a strange system where it was male principal speaker and female principal speaker. So I don't know whether they'll revert back to that, but she could be the next leader. Or there is Shara Ali, who is their deputy leader. There's the other deputy leader. Jenny Jones is obviously a name that has been bandied about for years.
I think she's ruled herself out.
Has she actually?
Yeah.
And I think it'd be. I think Jenny Jones would find it difficult as well, being the sole sort of Green Party representative campaigning for Brexit, when the party seemed to be quite united on that. But I have my money on Sian Berry, and I just think that I know Caroline Lucas is probably everyone's favourite to get it, but she's come from nowhere effectively. I mean, she's just a candidate in Camden.
I'm going to cut you there, Henry, because Sian Berry's also ruled herself out of the running.
Yeah. Her and Jenny Jones both did.
Well, has she endorsed Caroline Lucas then?
No, I don't think she's endorsed anyone.
That's I just think I thought she'd have been different. I feel as if Caroline Lucas won't bring the party into attracting any new supporters, because she is, when you think of the Green Party, the only two names, if you're politically engaged, will be Natalie Bennett perhaps Jenny Jones, but definitely Caroline Lucas. Do you think Caroline Lucas will improve their electoral performance, possibly, Mike?
I reckon there's a possibility, only because she has the name recognition, and I just want to say that I think it would be great if she became leader, only because it would really display the sort of Greens recycling policies. So.
I think that Sian Berry would be the obvious choice. I mean, it's an interesting move that she's ruled herself out. I'm not quite sure what the reasons were that she gave, but on the back of such success in London, a very forward-thinking, very accessible and normal representative.
In spite of Corbyn as well.
Yeah.
Such an achievement.
Definitely. She was being very, very succsuccessful, so I'm surprised she's ruled herself out.
Offer a left field choice.
Go on then.
I've heard a lot of people talk very positively about the Scottish Green leader, Patrick Harvey. He actually had, I think, one of the second or third best approval ratings in the Scottish elections.
But there's a weird sort of dichotomy in the party there, in the sense that it's the Green Party of England and Wales, isn't it?
Yes.
And the Scottish is separate. So I actually don't know the reasons why there's not a merger there. I was wondering if anyone actually knows that. No, it's just a mystery.
A bit like the Scottish Labour Party, isn't it?
Scottish Labour, Scottish Conservatives, Scottish Lib Dem.
But they're completely separate. The Scottish Green Party and the Green Party of England and Wales. But you think this particular person, and do you, Barnaby? Is that how you'd?
I mean, I'm not saying he'll get it, but I think he's been bandied about by some people. I think it was in one of the articles I read when Natalie Bennett actually stepped down, saying that he was, known as being a very sort of engaging person who could actually unlike Natalie Bennett, perhaps kind of enthuse people in interviews and things like that, actually have a real media presence.
I think Bernie Sanders should pull out the Democratic candidacy and come over and usurp the title of Green Party leader.
Wouldn't that be interesting if Larry Sanders, Bernie's brother, ran for Green Party leader, being a member, and I think he's a councillor as well? That'd be very interesting indeed. Just to show you what Natalie said today, this was her on the BBC Politics show talking about why she stepped down.
I went back to my proposals that I put forward when I stood for leader 4 years ago, and I said I wanted to grow the party, I wanted to make ourselves a truly national party, to win our place in the national debates. And I thought I've achieved those things. 1.1 million votes in the general election, being able to look David Cameron in the eye in those leader debates and say, why are you so failing to deal with the issue of Syrian refugees? Looking back sort of on the lighter moments when I had yelled over the top of Nigel Farage and Ed Miliband, who was trying to talk over the top of me in the second leader debate. But above all, the travelling around the country I've done, visiting local Green parties, there's scores more local Green parties around the country than there were. We've, of course, more than quadrupled the membership. And in the Green Party, leadership isn't like it is in other parties. It's not a greasy poll where people are scrambling to the top and cling there. I'm opening up the space for other people to come forward, other spaces. I'm not going away. I'm still planning very much to be involved in full-time politics. But there's a space now for someone else to come forward or other people to come forward.
My name's Sophie Walker, and you're listening to Raw.
Yes, you are indeed. And just doing a bit of research into the Scottish Greens, they separated in 1990 from the Green Party of England and Wales, as well as the Green Party of Northern Ireland. And interestingly, as Barnaby raised during the break, they were the only other party, other than the Scottish National Party, to support Scottish independence, whilst having representation in the Scottish Parliament. So, a bit of a niche placing there for the Scottish Green Party.
Very interesting. Barnaby, do you think that's a good idea, actually? I want to ask you about the mechanics of the Green Party now. Not that you're a connoisseur on that, but so in terms of having two principal speakers, one male, one female, that's unique. I know it doesn't exist anymore, but is that something that would appeal to people, do you think, or do you think it's just people thinking, the blooming Green Party trying to be as democratic as possible, all that nonsense?
Well, I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's a bit different. I mean, it stops the whole kind of cult of the leader thing from emerging. It shows that the party is sort of it's a group of people with different views who broadly agree on certain things. And I don't know, it might be nice. I mean, I know people sort of say, what's the point in having a gender balance? Do we really need it? Isn't it that shouldn't be the best people? But I think it often does help sort of the cream to rise to the top in terms of groups perhaps not represented as much.
Do you think it'd be interesting then for someone so as Sian Berry has, she was only elected a councillor in 2014. Now she's ran for mayor twice. She's done very well both times, and she's now obviously an AM, an assembly member. Would you think it'd be interesting to go to a couple of, not perhaps necessarily councillors, others, but people who aren't perhaps as well known as Jenny Jones and Sian Berry. Some names that have been mentioned are Jennifer Nadell, who I hadn't actually heard of, and Jonathan Bartley, who there's a very interesting... He wrote an article, actually, about why Jesus wouldn't vote for any of the three main parties, so he might have a bit of a past. But, so do you think that Mike and Sam, I'll just bring this to you, do you think that would be interesting then to have someone who's perhaps not that well known, as opposed to everyone thinking now, oh, you know, Natalie Bennett's gone, they've been waiting for Caroline Lucas for the past sort of 10 years to, or whatever, how long it's been, it hasn't been 10 years, but to save Natalie Bennett from her public speaking nightmares. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think it would be unwise to go back to Caroline Lucas.
Do you?
I think the party should tap into this whole, increased popularity, especially amongst young people, and try and target that, although that's kind of been monopolised by Jeremy Corbyn.
That's what I mean. Do you not think that she'd be sort of the best person, Michael? Do you not think she'd be the best person to, when Corbyn inevitably does step down as leader, whether that's because of an awful general election defeat, or perhaps because of the party bringing him down internally, that having a strong leader like Caroline Lucas, who has experience of leadership before, and attracting the voters that Jeremy Corbyn perhaps engineers, would be something that would just be an obvious choice?
Well, I mean, the fact is that obvious choices are sometimes the ones which crush a party. So, I mean, I think probably the primary example for me is Gordon Brown, who probably...
Don't get Barnaby started on Gordon Brown, that's our...
led Labour to sort of... I might describe it as a disaster, but... the fact is that if they don't have Caroline Lucas as a leader, then they don't really have any option except for somebody completely new, because nobody else knows any Green Party politicians.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that they may well go for someone new, because the Green Party is such a grassroots movement. There's a lot of people within the party who aren't elected officials, who no one really has any clue about. And looking at some of the things that Sian Berry said, she said she would urge a number of people in the party to...
We've messaged in from Gordon Brown just to
okay, well, God, interrupt me and let's hear from Gordon.
The allegedly Gordon Brown has said, who are you calling a disaster? So I doubt that's...
Can we hear that in Gordon's voice?
Who are you calling a disaster? You do that better, Barnaby. You have a go.
Are you calling that a disaster?
There we go. And just a plug on that, Barnaby has written, or is in the process, Niall is in the process of editing a very interesting article on Gordon Brown's visit to Warwick, which I know, Barnaby, it was worth getting up early for, as it says in the title, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
But Niall, sorry to... you were there, Sam, weren't you?
Yeah, I'd never seen a PM or former PM before, and I was a bit starstruck when he walked in.
Were you?
Although he was very more grey-haired than I remembered him.
Mike, were you still in bed, or just not attracted by Gordon Brown?
I didn't even know it was on campus.
It was very secrettive,
yeah,
actually.
It was just the day before.
I
Just had a few people. You have to be in the right circles.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, nobody invited me to see Gordon Brown, probably because I would have managed to, I don't know, insult him or something.
Fair enough.
I'm interested. What was he like after the event? Was he was he talkative? Was he happy and obliging to talk and take pictures? And
Gordon can be, perhaps. I think you'd argue. I mean,
I saw him sort of oozing out a smile in some of the photos.
Yeah. I mean, he was happy to talk to people who were buying his book.
Yeah, I mean, but I think he was very good in that. I know it was probably a bit of a publicity stunt getting his book signing happening, but I mean, he did wait and sign every single person who wanted a book's copy. And although his signature wasn't the best, I was quite disappointed with his signature. You expect it to go on for a while, and it was literally just Gordon. Like, with a full stop at the end. It was very short. Alistair, were you not attracted by Gordon Brown's visit to Warwick? I didn't see you there.
Gave that one a miss, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Not your cup of tea?
He's not my cup of tea, no.
Or your cup of iron brew?
He's not my cup of anything, I'm afraid.
Just before we go to a song, I didn't ask you much about the Green Party, Alistair. Do you want to sort of sum up what you think the Green Party will do? Will they go for someone new, do you think? Or do you think they'll just say, Caroline will probably, continue. It won't have to start again if Caroline gets it. We can just, continue as normal.
I'm 50-50 on, what they might actually do. I'm not too sure on that one. If they do go with Caroline Lucas, they risk creating a Nigel Farage situation where they really only have one politician. I would just say on the thing of having them, two speakers, one male, one female, ideologically, a nice idea, politically a terrible idea. You've got to have one leader and a consistent message.
Thank you very much. Alistair.
My name's Toby Young, and you're listening to Perspectives.
Yes, welcome back to Perspectives. We're now moving on to UKIP, Neil Hamilton and Nigel Farage.
Yay.
There has been accusations from Hamilton that Farage has been making ageist comments about him, which are, they're intriguing accusations. They have a bit of a past, as we know. In the 2015 general election, Nigel Farage attempted to stop him from standing and succeeded. He also sacked him as the party deputy chair, and he didn't want him to stand in Wales, but Neil at last got his way. Where do we stand on all this? Do either of us do we have a favourite out of Neil Hamilton and Nigel Farage? Barnaby, I'll start with you.
To quote a panelist from last week, it's like being asked to choose between terminal cancer and AIDS again. In my view, anyway. It's too. I mean, I probably have to say Nigel. Nigel Farage.
Are you really proud of copywriting that one, Alex? Not Alex, Alistair. Alistair was sort of like, that was my one.
So I'd like some royalties if you're going to use that.
We would.
Sorry. Anyway, I mean, Neil Hamilton's just a serial, just bad person, really. I mean, cash for honours. I believe at the UKIP party conference a couple of years ago, he accosted a journalist and essentially demanded he take him out for a meal on his expenses account. I mean, Nigel Farage is saintly in comparison.
I think there's probably an understanding in the party that Neil Hamilton has tried to commandeer a certain degree of power. There's already been an issue that he has been elected to be the leader of UKIP in the Welsh Assembly, overtaking Nathan Gill, who was Nigel Farage's man on the inside. Do we think that Nigel Farage will end up winning this battle between him and Neil Hamilton, or do you think Neil Hamilton's position is just too strong? Sam Berkson.
Farage wins everything in UKIP. He's the only man who can resign and then unresign and everyone be okay with it. But him calling Neil Hamilton old is pot calling kettle black, isn't it, really? Everyone who's above 30 is old to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Nigel's 52, so he's not, he's not young and
chicken. He does look older than
he does look older.
Must be all the fags.
Neil's like 80.
Well, yeah, they are going to catch up, aren't they, eventually?
The UKIP lifestyle.
And the plane crashes, yeah.
They love it.
Mike? Bad taste?
I suspect Nigel is going to crash and burn at any point soon, because he doesn't seem to understand how party politics really works, as in you have to sort of give out roles to people, and what he is instead doing is going, give me all the power like an overgrown golem, and it's just.
But he will say on that if you gave the party leadership to Suzanne Evans or Douglas Carswell, they wouldn't be as good as me, or something like that along those lines. Would you agree with him? Because Farage is UKIP. UKIP is Farage.
I don't really care as long as UKIP crashes and burns, to be honest. Any leader that sort of plummets it to the ground. I mean, the irony is that this is a lot of ex-Tory MPs sort of arguing about the ins and outs of a party, which I mean, it makes the Tory party actually look united in the most ironic way possible.
Yeah, so. I mean, interestingly, Mark Reckless, who lost his seat when he defected to UKIP and has now been elected as a Welsh Assembly member, has backed Nigel Farage and Nathan Gill on the issue. Does factionalism risk bringing UKIP down altogether? I think there was a quote in the Telegraph that it would be a battle between the Hamiltos and the Nigellas. Two fighting UKIP camps.
It was in the Telegraph.
Oh, wow.
I'll open this to you, Barnaby. Do you think factionalism will be the end of UKIP?
I mean, as we've said, Nigel Farage is pretty unassailable. I mean, I think his biggest threat was the coup after the 2015 election. We had Patrick O'Flynn retiring, people like that, and he wrote that one out absolutely fine.
But then if we look beyond the EU referendum and there is a vote to stay in the European Union, will there then be fresh calls for him to stand down and there be a different figurehead?
It's possible, yeah, especially since they'll have to change their kind of approach away perhaps so much from Europe. But I think Farage will go when he goes, and then there'll be some kind of reckoning between the two factions. But I think his faction's got a fairly big head start.
All right, and just to let you know, there has been a message in from Christy, who's a future UKIP leader, Roger Helmer, ? Roger Helmer is 73, I believe, and so looks unlikely. Sam, you were at the debate. Do you think Roger Helmer could improve on Nigel Farage's leadership of UKIP?
He could improve in the sense that if he does, I will just have to leave the country, and that will probably be a good thing for some people. You can't. If Neil Hamilton's old, then Roger Helmer is a fossil.
Fair enough.
But you can't
Are you
deny...
being ageist?
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
No, I'm being UKIPist, and I like that we've got a sort of Mersey-Cheshire alliance going on here against UKIP in favour of just whoever goes, Farage, Hamilton, whoever loses out, as long as the party loses out as a whole, then I'm not really fussed.
Yeah.
But then on the specific point of ageism in politics, though, I mean, Neil Hamilton was quite funny in that he said he compared that Ronald Reagan was 77 when he ended the Soviet Union and the Cold War. Clement Attlee was 65 when he introduced the NHS and was obviously Prime Minister. And Winston Churchill was 72 when he defeated the Nazis. And obviously you've got Jeremy Corbyn, who's not too young himself. I think he's Neil Hamilton is just older than Jeremy Corbyn. But then Bernie Sanders is 7 years older.
Is Neil Hamilton deciding he's done then? He's listing his achievements.
I know.
Which did he
He's
do?
an elected AM. I mean, he's on par with Churchill in his opinion. But do you think that's really a problem, though, the age in politics, Alistair?
I mean, it's a problem for UKIP because they don't have that many young members, proportionally probably the least young members of any major party. What I would say is Nigel Farage is like the Lenin of UKIP, okay? He's brought them a long way. He needs to recognise his achievements and retire and become some kind of, party grandee chairman person. Find 5 or 6 decent successors, form a little Politburo, and allow them to take the party to the next stage, which is, winning elections, really, and getting some real power. If he doesn't do that, if he wants to hold the power indefinitely, UKIP are going to stagnate because you need to have the possibility for people to advance themselves within the party.
And he's going to get to the same age as Neil Hamilton at some point, and then what's he going to say then? I'm too old, I need to step down.
But then, so Barnaby, on that specific issue, though, of age, do you think it is a problem? Do you think you can be too old for politics? And obviously Ronald Reagan's famous quote against Walter Mondale when he said, age isn't a problem in this campaign, I won't exploit the inexperience and youthfulness of my opponent, he was in his 60s, I think, as well. Yes. Walter Mondale was pretty old. Do you think it's that much of a problem?
No, I mean, I think it's a case of, are you good enough to make it a non-issue? I mean, obviously people who aren't very good and are old, invited, so you're past it, mate, you've lost it. But as long as you're actually good at your job, I mean, the reason people like Attlee and even Jeremy Corbyn are doing well at the moment is because obviously they are still, compos mentis. But you don't want to give the excuse.
I mean, there's a very interesting thing that happened early this week. I think Neil Hamilton actually ruled himself out of ever standing for the UKIP leadership on the grounds of being too old. And then a couple of days later, Nigel Farage described him as being no spring chicken, and then he accused him of ageist remarks. So he's rather using age as a tool to further his position. But do we see Neil Hamilton, partly because of his age and his position, as sort of impenetrable from Nigel Farage because he doesn't have anything to lose? He's not reliant, as many UKIP Assembly members and members are, on Nigel Farage's power. He can merely do what he wants and act as an independent figure because at the end of the day, if he loses his seat, that doesn't matter too much to him either. Mike, I'll go to you on that.
Yeah, when he said that he wasn't going to run for UKIP leader, that's when he became dangerous to Nigel Farage because he's literally just declaring that he has absolutely nothing to lose. Like he is going to garner some political power or popularity within UKIP, and it's going to sort of start snowballing towards Farage, which is in some ways good and in some ways bad for the party. But I mean, the thing that we should probably get out of this is that they're all old and they'll probably all die soon. So,
Zoe Wong, by the way, has messaged in and has said, "Long live Chairman Nigel." So, thank you very much for that, Zoe. Alistair, do you agree with that? Long live Chairman Nigel.
Yes, I do.
That was your point, wasn't it?
I mean, I think people do give a UKIP a lot of stick, and much of it is deserved. In my younger foolish days, I was a member briefly. But this is before some of the internal contradictions became apparent. But I'm not a wholehearted supporter. I would say, though, without Nigel Farage, we wouldn't be having a say on the EU. Fundamentally.
That's true. So. Fair enough. He has rather brought the issue to the forefront of politics. Before we go to another song, I will just open that up to Mike and Sam and just see if they've got any further comments on the Nigel Farage issue. Do you think it's an end now for Nigel in politics? He's falling out with his own members recently. Whether we like Neil Hamilton or not, obviously we know his name for different reasons rather than his recent AM election. But I mean, he's been elected, unlike Farage, to a major political office. I know Nigel obviously is an MEP, but wasn't elected as an MP.
I think. Sorry, Mike. Nigel Farage has been excellent, not just as a political figure, to get more people engaged or more people talking about politics, particularly the EU, because whether you want to stay in or leave, I think everyone pretty much agrees that it needs reforming and it needs to be better for the citizens of the UK and other people around Europe. And without him leading that, we wouldn't be having this debate. But I think it will be the end of Nigel Farage on June the 24th.
And Mike?
I don't think there'll ever be an end to Nigel Farage, purely because he's done so much of this stuff that he will continue to be a sort of voice, like an ex-Prime Minister sort of figure, except with, I don't know, less class maybe.
Thank you very much.
Less class than Blair.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
My name's Sian Berry, Green Party candidate for Mayor, and you're listening to Raw.
Hello. You're listening to Raw 12:51 a.m. This is Bizzle Brash. Boom, boom.
On the subject of Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage is also in the news this week, as I'm sure many of you have known. He has been selected as the Leave representative, the Brexit representative for the debate against David Cameron. So I'm sure Nigel's pleased with that, going up against the Prime Minister. I don't know how he's wangled that. Barnaby, how do you think he has managed to be, because bearing in mind Grassroots Out weren't selected as the official opposition. I think it was Vote Leave, and obviously there's other ones like Leave.eu. Is this similar to them choosing a scientists for EU group over the Stronger in Europe? How do you think Nigel Farage has wangled that?
I think David Cameron's been able to use a bit of the old wiggle room there, because he said before he wouldn't debate Tories who wanted to leave the EU. So while they probably should be picking Boris Johnson or maybe Michael Gove, he's obviously made it quite clear to the BBC, whoever's going to be showing the debate, that that's not going to happen. And as the Prime Minister, who has previously just refused to turn up to debates, I think he is in a position to be making those sorts of demands.
Alistair, who do you think is going to gain more from this debate? Do you think Cameron's going to look good because he's not debating a Tory, or Nigel's going to look good because he's got that blooming debate against the Prime Minister that he's wanted for ages?
Absolutely, Nigel Farage, because not only
he's going to have a field day, isn't he, like he did with Clegg?
He's literally he has raised himself from being a political joke in the eyes of most people in Westminster to being a debate against the leader of the country. It's a massively important step for him. Also, the fact that he is probably a better off-the-cuff speaker than David Cameron, which means he might win the debate in the most basic terms as well.
And Mike, what do you think about Nigel Farage being? Do you think that's representative of Vote Leave? I mean, you've had people on the left on that organisation, well, arguably on the left, like Kate Hoey, who are perhaps more suitable candidates from the opposition party. Do you think Nigel's really appropriate to represent the whole of Brexit?
I mean, I don't know whether you can have somebody who would be able to represent the whole of Brexit, because there are so many sort of political discussions, and it's a wider issue than just people wanting to leave. But I think he is the person who's spoken the loudest. Certainly, he has been the biggest speaker, other than maybe Boris Johnson. But I'm not sure whether Boris Johnson debating is something that I particularly want to see, to be fair. So
I get the impression this is very clever politics by Number 10. I think in framing the debate through Nigel Farage, it will turn off a number of unsure voters. I think that if they were to put forward Boris Johnson or Michael Gove, it may appear to many a bit more of a conscious decision, but I think Nigel Farage is toxic for a number of people, and by doing that I mean Vote Leave have come out and said that it was all done behind their backs, and that Nigel Farage being chosen as the Vote Leave representative was purely a decision to secure David Cameron's attendance.
I think the biggest shame is that there are left-wing cases for staying in and left-wing cases for leaving, and none of them are going to be represented in this debate. But either way, if we're talking about who's going to look better out of Cameron and Farage, Farage is going to be sweating. He's going to look like the slippery bull toad that he is. And then Cameron's going to be all shiny and plastic like the Lego man he is. And ultimately, people are probably going to be swayed by him.
I'm just going to disagree with you there, Niall. I think if they had another Tory, both sides, in fact, are probably aware that they're the Liberal press and the Remain press, which is tend to be like the Guardian, the Independent, papers like that, would be able to easily spin it as a internal Tory party struggle.
Yeah.
I'd agree. I'd agree with that also. So I'd also expand on my point and say that that's also the case. I'd say Number 10 are avoiding damage limitation in that sense as well.
Just so you can hear what Nigel has been saying about this was him on the BBC this morning.
The official Vote Leave campaign are run by a couple of apparatchiks who've tried for the last 6 months to exclude me from everything. which frankly is ludicrous. We cannot win the referendum if all we see are Conservative voices. I'm delighted we've got 6 cabinet ministers and they're doing great work. But actually, we need UKIP voices, we need Labour voices, we need trade union voices, and we need a degree of unity if we're going to work together. And I'm sad to see what they've said about me, surprised that they threatened ITV, and frankly, Michael Gove is chairman of Vote Leave, and I would say to Michael, get a grip on your staff.
I'm Winston McKenzie, and you're listening to Raw 51 AM.
I'd say they don't need to convince UKIP voters, though. They need to convince Conservative ones.
Yeah. Like, the idea that you need to convince UKIP voters when the party's called the UK Independence Party is probably a bit daft, isn't it? So,
just like now, we've had a message in from Harry, who has sent me a picture of a Weetabix box with Brexit on, saying made with non-EU wheat, and a picture of Nigel's face on it, and he says, I don't want to wake up on the 24th of June and have to eat this. So thank you very much for that, Harry. Apologies we can't show you video or an image of that, but we might upload that to the Perspectives Raw page.
I think we will.
I think that'll be a nice bit of fun for all of you. Alistair, so on this, are you sure? I mean, I take that you disagree with Niall a little bit, as you were a former member of UKIP. Do you think Nigel Farage will get people out to vote, which will be more, beneficial than perhaps not attracting people from, diehard Conservatives or moving people from the left over to vote Brexit? He will attract the working class and get them out to vote, which is more important.
I think obviously UKIP have a certain appeal amongst the working class, and if you don't agree with that, I'd suggest going and looking at the election results from last year up north.
Yeah.
I think that the unspoken factor in this, there is a lot of Labour voters who are, because Labour aren't doing as well as they should be really electorally, but there's still probably a base 8 to 10 million Labour voters who are going to have a big say in, how this referendum goes. Neither side is exploiting them, really. There are strong arguments on both sides, but I can see a lot of working class voters, being quite swayed by the arguments to leave the EU. And I have to say, Farage is making some partisan points there about UKIP, but when he talks about Labour and Labour voters, he's on the right track, I think.
Alistair, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave that there. And it's now time for our quiz, which I'm sure you're all very much looking forward to. So we will have on this side, I'll give you a couple of minutes to think of a team name, but we have Barnaby and Alistair, and then on the right-hand side, on the right of the table, we have Mike and Sam, and Sam doesn't look too impressed to be called on the right.
This is very much in the ilk of a Raw Sport midweek.
It is, of course,
very exciting.
Not copying anything, but
I'm quite concerned what Alistair's writing.
I'm just wondering, because this might be a bit, I'm not sure we can get away with this one, but what do you think?
Well, that means no then, Alistair. Here are the questions. So the first question is, and I hope none of you have cheated and looked at this before.
Wouldn't dream of it.
In the last which political party and politician has recently declared that they will not run for the Tooting by-election? Whoever says his name first will win. Or
George
her.
Galloway.
Congratulations. Barnaby, you are on it. I hope that wasn't cheating again. And I need the party, actually, as well. Just to
Respect.
The Respect Party. Thank you very much.
Okay, second question is up. In the last few days, who challenged Sadiq Khan to an IQ test? The same rule applies. First name wins.
Donald Trump.
Correct, Mike. Yes, Donald Trump challenged Sadiq Khan to an IQ test after Sadiq Khan described Donald Trump as ignorant on the issue of Muslims and immigration.
I threw in some curveball options there, just, I had Ken Livingstone on there, just because Ken said anything, in the last few weeks. Piers Corbyn, sorry, not Piers.
Piers Corbyn.
Piers Corbyn, who is Jeremy Corbyn's brother.
Oh, isn't he the weather guy?
Yeah, he's a bit insane.
He's a climate
and
change
Marie Le
denier,
Pen, who I just thought, she often says funny things as well. Now, moving on to the third question, we're currently tied at 1-1. What did Jeremy Corbyn recently advise people? And I'll give you the options, and the same rule applies again, so just shout out whoever gets it first. So, did he advise people, don't tweet when you're drunk? Did he advise people, don't bring up Hitler in an interview? Did he advise people drinking coffee during stressful times is counterproductive? Or did he tell people that they shouldn't listen to Katie Hopkins on her new show on LBC? I'll wait for someone to shout this out.
I think it would probably be a good idea for him to tell people not to mention Hitler during interviews, but I don't think that's the answer.
I'm going to go with Katie Hopkins.
Unfortunately, you are wrong there, Alistair. I'm going to go to the other side now. So they've narrowed it down to 2 now. So he either told people don't tweet when you are drunk, or drinking coffee during stressful times is counterproductive.
Corbyn is really aware of like the drunk tweeting culture.
Fair enough.
But so I'm going to go for coffee.
Unfortunately, you are wrong. So no one can get the points there. And Jeremy Corbyn did tell Labour members don't tweet when you're drunk, because apparently that will harm the party.
That's the emphasis I need.
And the final question.
Okay, the final and deciding question. Why is the chair of Labour's anti-Semitism inquiry under fire? There are 4 options. She has said that Ken's comments were historically accurate. She has joined the party with people questioning her independence. She failed to declare her salary for the job. Or she said that Corbyn is unelectable.
She just joined the party. Just joined the party. Shami Chakrabarti recently joined the party.
For the sake of loudness, I think we will give you that. And that unfortunately brings to the end this show. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for being good sports. Thank you for being good sports in the old quiz. Very, very well fought, both of you. And just let you know now, we will be playing the Jacob Rees-Mogg interview, which me and Niall got the other week, speaking for the Brexit Society on campus.
He was speaking for the Brexit Society. He was very, very nice to give us an interview and to give us a little soundbite publicising Raw.
True gentleman. What was that? Sorry,
He wore a double-breasted suit, didn't he?
I think he did. It's just his usual dress, isn't it?
Interesting fact
he was
is
looking very grand.
during a meeting today, Charlie Hindhoff also wore a double-breasted suit.
Did he really?
He did.
Gossip from the poor.
Spot the difference.
Mike there. So here is our perspectives interview with Jacob Rees-Mogg.
My name is Jacob Rees-Mogg, and you are listening to Raw.
Henry, Sam and I have been enjoying a wonderful evening with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is here to argue the Brexit cause. Jacob, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and it's been a great pleasure being here to talk today about Brexit.
Thank you. We thoroughly enjoyed your talk, and we just had a few questions we wanted to ask. One of your key points was on the European Commission and the fact that it is undemocratic, and as was explored in the talk, I just wanted to look at your position on the House of Lords, which you don't advocate reform or abolishing.
No, the House of Lords is not democratic, but the House of Commons is. It's been very difficult to work out what reform should be made of the House of Lords. In principle, I think it would be a good idea to reform it. I think it's very hard to justify a patronage house as it's currently constructed, except to say that it does a very respectable job of reviewing legislation that is passed by the Commons and has a majority in the Commons, but the Lords looks through the details. The question of reform is, how do you do something that doesn't replicate the Commons, compete with the Commons, or lead to gridlock? And if you can answer those 3 questions, then you can come up with a reform. But you need to do that first.
Just looking at the European Commission, the United Kingdom has the ability to nominate 2 commissioners, I believe. We have one at the minute, who David Cameron nominated Jonathan Hill. This is a similar system seen in the US with secretaries of state nominated by the leaders of the country. I was wondering, is this just not a good thing because the body allows experts to be nominated to be in it?
I see what you mean, but I don't agree with you at all. It's only one. It got reduced from 2 in one of the treaties, I think prior to Lisbon. In the US, the president appoints the cabinet, which is then subject to ratification by the Senate. So that's very different from one country appointing a representative who then specifically swears an oath to the European Union and that he will put its interests first, not those of the country that sends him. So no, I don't feel that gives any democratic mandate or oversight to the Commission.
If you could just give one reason for undecided people why they should vote to leave the EU, obviously you've got a plethora of reasons, I expect. What would you advise? Obviously, bearing in mind there's people from different sides of the spectrum. People on the right are perhaps more concerned with immigration, arguably. If you could give one sort of unifying point as to why you think undecided should vote for Brexit.
But one point is people have to decide whether their country is Europe, in which case they should vote to remain, or is their country the United Kingdom, in which case they should vote to leave. If they believe it's the United Kingdom, they will restore their democratic control of their lives, the effectiveness of their representatives determining their laws, and also increase their chances of prosperity, because prosperity is dependent on your constitutional systems.
You suggested that David Cameron's renegotiation of terms was a waste of time. Would you consider supporting a reformed European Union, and do you think that David Cameron was a weak representative for the United Kingdom?
I said in the House of Commons to David Cameron himself that I thought it was thin gruel, so I haven't said anything today that will come as any great surprise to anybody. I think the difficulty for the Prime Minister is that the EU didn't realise how much it needs to reform. In his Bloomberg speech in 2013, he set out to have fundamental reform of the EU, not just bits and pieces for the UK, and he then met with a brick wall. And I think that is not his fault. I think that shows the stubbornness of the European elite, who think the answer to all their problems is more Europe, when all that they've done so far, as I was mentioning in my talk, agriculture, fish, the euro, immigration, has failed, and more Europe is not the answer. So no, I don't think it was his weakness so much as the folly of the European elite.
So just to confirm that, so if Nigel Farage went in there with, I don't know, a pint of beer in one hand rather than David Cameron trying to get a better deal for Britain, do you think it's because the Commission's so stubborn he wouldn't have been able to get anything more?
I think it would have been very hard to get more than was given, because nothing was given, which showed that their intention not to give anything. As it happens, had we been able to have a fundamental renegotiation, I would have been in favour of that.
And just finally, on being an MP, you stood for Parliament twice before you were elected, I think once in Scotland and once in Shropshire, and you were unsuccessful both times. So what sort of advice would you give to people aspiring to go into politics who maybe not guaranteed to succeed first time round?
Who may be at Warwick University and very interested in radio. My advice is that they're clearly such brilliant people that they'll get selected straight away. But in the almost inconceivable event this doesn't happen, just keep going. Just apply again and again. If you want to be a Member of Parliament, you can become a Member of Parliament, but you mustn't mind if you fall at hurdles. You've just got to keep ploughing on.
An argument I often hear is that people who are in favour of remaining in the EU argue that it's a great force for peace. How would you respond to this?
Balderdash. NATO is a great force for peace and kept the peace in the Cold War and still has the agreement, the Article 5 agreement, that we will come to the aid of any country that is invaded. That is what deterred the Soviet Union from invading during the Cold War and continues to hold back President Putin now. It isn't the European Union, where a number of member states are neutral and wouldn't be involved in protecting peace anyway. And the openness of the borders has been a contributory factor to some of the problems that have recently occurred on the European continent.
And very lastly for me, are you assured that the Conservative Party can recover from this dichotomy that's blatantly split it?
Oh, the Conservative Party has recovered from everything eventually, yes, and it will recover from this too. My name is Jacob Rees-Mogg, and you're listening to Raw.
My name is Sadiq Khan. I'm running to the Mayor of London, and you're listening to Raw.